Good morning. We are live from QuakeCon 2023, and this is day 2 of the Quake World Championship. I'm DJ Wheat, joined this morning by Flea and Ketchup. And yesterday we saw the group stages in order for these players to find their spot in the round of 16. But today the action really heats up as we find, or hopefully make our way to the journey to find who will ultimately be crowned the Quake World Championship here for 2023. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome. We had a pretty exciting day yesterday. Certainly, I wouldn't say all the results that we expected. There were certainly some upsets. There were some fantastic games, and today should be no different. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Yesterday, indeed, was an amazing start to the tournament. We had some really exciting matches, some upsets as well, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've already had to say goodbye to 4 of the current players, being Garpy, Sip, CNZ, and Dramis have already left the tournament yesterday, but now we're really getting into it.
It's a heartbreaking time, you know. You've only just started the tournament. It's been a year's worth of an effort, and then already having to say goodbye to some beloved people. Never feels good, but what it does mean is that players qualified their way into today. I mean, you can see before you there, even Buckster had quite the wonderful performance yesterday, and I think is feeling pretty confident going into today's matches. And that is one of many players. Outside of that, you know, we're starting things off with KELTZ versus VENGEURR. KELTZ, another player that really stepped up, had a rough start, but kind of stepped up after that, conquered the fact that, look, first LAN, now we can show up, now we can play some proper Quake.
Yeah, I mean, he first lost to Buckster 0-2, but then he took down Dramis, and I think one of the biggest upsets of yesterday.
Yeah,
and so, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him. I talked to him for a second earlier. He was looking good. Of course, his first opponent of the day is none other than VENGEURR, the current #1 on the leaderboard. So wait, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be a tough one. But if groups was any indication of what we could expect over the course of the weekend, it's the fact that, right, like the future is not written yet. We've been talking about for the last few weeks that there are so many players that are capable of potentially disrupting, you know, the bracket and maybe even coming out as a new champion here. The fact that some of our QPL regulars are already out, or those who have been in the QPL before are now out, it says a lot about just the talent that we've got here at QuakeCon 2023 for the Quake World Championship. So these are just a few of the spectacular frags that we saw yesterday during the group stages.
One of my personal favorites, that one.
There were some very, very good matches, and again, right, some results that I think were a bit surprising. But today, the round of 16 means that we're going to, right, see the bracket play out, but it also means that we'll have our first players also eliminated from that round of 16 bracket. We're not gonna, it's going to take us a while to get there. That'll be closer to the end of the day, as we will, you mentioned, we're going to see the top seed versus the number 16 seed. But at this point in time, you know, everyone has got to play everyone. If you're going to be that champion, you've got to just be ready for any opponent that you get thrown at. So you mentioned the players that have exited already. I think Dramis definitely probably the most surprising of the group, but shout out to Buckster and KELTZ, who did a great job of hanging on and making that happen. And yeah, we're going to also take a look at the bracket now, so you can kind of get a preview and get an idea on right, what could happen here today. You've already got some really interesting round of 8 potential matches there, but what do you guys think?
I'm thinking it's a LAN. And at LAN, weird stuff can happen. I think everyone's going to be, excuse me, as practiced as they can be. I know that players have been able to, I think, practice here as early as, I want to say Tuesday, I think it was, later on when everything was set up. And it's right, sit down, set up your matches, and just play. Play as much as you can to get comfortable with the LAN version. And if anything else, just get comfortable in this environment. Some players in this bracket have been there, done that for years and years. Some players, not so much. This is their first. Maybe their second LAN. Sometimes it's their first QuakeCon. So the difference of the environment can make such a difference to your mental state. And if you're not mentally in the game, Quake's a hard game as is, and that's not an extra dynamic you need to deal with.
Oh, absolutely not. And it's very interesting to see kind of the difference in practice regimen, I feel like. There's some players who are in here first thing in the morning, right? Maxter, for example, was here after dinner even. He was like, okay, Sparty, you and I, we're going to go back and we're going to play a few more sets. We're going to practice. And then there's some players that are the polar opposite who are really like, I'm at a level where I'm comfortable. I'm feeling confident. I'm just going to, you know, maybe play some custom games, play against bots, just make sure that my aim is up to par. But other than that, I really don't want to be showing too much to my opponents. And I'm really just going to stick to my guns knowing what I've got.
And look at that day 2 schedule. That is packed. We've got both the main stream on /Quake and then the B stream on Quake 2. You're going to get to see all of the matches that are taking place in the round of 16 and then everything else starting at around 2 p.m. on the B stream. That is when you could start to see some players eliminated. We are in a double elimination situation, so if any players lose in that first matchup, they're okay. They drop down, but that means that their road and their journey is going to be that much more difficult. Now, with that being said, we've seen plenty of players crawl and climb their way out of the lower bracket to make it there to the end, and ultimately someone will do that for the finals. That'll be tomorrow, the finals day for day 3 of the Quake World Championship. So let's talk about this first match that we've got. You've already mentioned it, but our number 1 seed versus number 16 seed, it's going to be VENGEURR versus KELTZ. And, you know, I will be the first to admit, when I saw KELTZ's first match versus Buckster yesterday, it was like one of the early ones. It was a little slow, a little calculated, which is fine. We see the type of match in Quake Champions all the time. But there was a thought that, you know, maybe Dramus is going to turn up the pace a little bit. But it was actually these two, and KELTZ being one of them, that completely kind of ran with that group. So KELTZ is going to be the first one up, and he's got a tough one because VENGEURR, current champion and number 1 seed, he had a great season. And you know, what do you think about KELTZ?
I mean, I was watching him yesterday against Buckster, and his first match against Buckster, his opponent was extremely defensive, right? Buckster was full-on defensive, always hugging the choke points, the corners, ready with the rockets out. And then afterwards, there was a big contrast going up against Dramus, who's an extremely aggressive player, and obviously he fared significantly better against Dramus. Now, I don't know if that was just him, you know, shaking off the jitters, the nerves, or if that's just kind of something about like the playstyle that he likes to go up against.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, you look at someone like VENGEURR who is ready and prepared for everyone. There's just that level of excellence he's been able to reach where, unless you are of the absolute highest caliber, it's hard to predict anyone being able to take a series off him. I think we've seen the occasional map here and there through the online period this year, but it's never been enough. I mean, look at all that red. He's taken out basically everyone with the exception of a loss to Rafa, which was 2-1. So it's not exactly like it was a dominant victory. And when people are looking at potential champions, I think VENGEURR is one of the picks, and there's just such a good reason for that. He has grown so much as a player from when we very first saw him. You know, even when you saw VENGEURR for the first time in QC, you could tell that there was so much potential, and it hadn't even been close to being reached. Now, years and years down the line, everything has become refined where, you know, you're looking at a dueling machine. My point here is that I do strongly think that this heavily favors VENGEURR. You know, from an experience standpoint, this isn't his first QuakeCon, this isn't his first LAN, this isn't his first major tournament finals either. Yep,
so actually before we jump into the picks and bans, we did get to sit down with a lot of the players before QuakeCon began. Let's actually hear from KELTZ and hear what he had to say before the tournament started.
I go by KELTZ. And I'm here playing for myself. My nickname KELTZ, it really comes from like, you know, nothing really. It was just like, you know, just like something I kind of came up with when I was like, you know, around like 10, 11, I think. And you know, for me, the nickname has no real meaning. It's just what I picked. My favorite champion is probably Slash, because she can, like, you know, move super fast. So due to her you know, fast movement, she is the favorite champion for me. My favorite weapon is probably shaft or lightning gun, and just, you know, feels super nice to shoot with. This is my first QuakeCon and also my first LAN. I will be facing Buckster in the first match, and then also Aramis. I'm not, super worried about them because I have, fought them many times. The best chance of winning, I would say probably Razy, and then perhaps VENGEURR or Rafa.
And KELTZ didn't have much problem yesterday, although he did lose a matchup in the groups. He able to make it out, and now he's up here against his opponent, VENGEURR. Calm, collected. I'm curious to see how he's going to perform here. Let's take a look at the picks and bans and see how this is going to play out as both players are eagerly waiting this match start. So Deep Embrace, Corrupted Keep, and Molten Falls are going to be our map picks. Flea, you want to take us through these?
Yeah, starting things off, Anarchy, right? Champion that often is banned because of how powerful and dominant he's been in the current meta, and VENGEURR gets to run him right off the bat on Deep Embrace versus Strock. Then Corrupted Keep, very standard, Galena versus the BJ, two of the most popular champions for that map. And then to conclude, Molten Falls, two of the squishies, the fast, nimble champions, Slash versus Nyx. Now, Nyx definitely not the most common pick, right? Not a go-to pick for Molten Falls because there's just relatively limited utility that her passive, the wall jump, gives, but still a solid choice.
The removal of the scale bearer on that map is something that surprises nobody, I think. I mean, we saw it yesterday. I shan't talk to that about you, Wheat. Maybe that's a conversation for later today.
Talk about it. It's like one of those rare Quake Champions moments, but yeah.
But I mean, some of those bans are going to be due to that. It's going to be either a map-specific ban, maybe it's going to be a personal ban on a player. I expect a clutch ban will likely come through over the course of the day with some of the other players. But as you said, Flea, I mean, everything else here is very, very expected. And I kind of want to repeat today what I said a little bit yesterday, just in case anyone's tuning in today that wasn't there. I've spoke to a few players, and I think people really seem to favor the Ranger on LAN. I know he was strong before anyway, but there's just something about this LAN setting that some players really think he has that even higher edge than he had before. So I kind of wonder if we're going to see Ranger banned quite a lot over the course of this weekend. Yeah,
that'll be interesting to see how this is going to play out, because every LAN also kind of has its own little meta that exists, and we're bound to see that play out here throughout the weekend. So yeah, excited to see what we've got out of these two as we kick off our first round of 16. Coming up here on the A stream after that, we're going to have Rafa versus Dandaking, Kilson versus Sparty, and then Razy versus Effortless. Really interesting because all four of those have been players that have come out of others' mouths in terms of could win this tournament. So we're going to get to see what shape these folks are in here on day 2.
That's the main thing that I'm now looking at, right? Because we've seen many of these players in action yesterday, like KELTZ, for example. But many of the top 8, I mean, all of them, we haven't gotten to see on stage at all, because they managed to essentially skip day 1 because of their better seeding. So it's really a surprise. Yeah, we've gotten to watch over their shoulders, look at them practice, but that's still very, very different from actually going up against your opponent on stage.
There's just something exciting about the day itself. I mean, that kind of has its good reasons and sometimes it's sad reasons, because you can practice as much as you want. You can be in those practice areas from Tuesday all the way up until now. But the moment you've sat down on that stage, if things just don't go your way, there's no reruns here. So the intensity that you have to have, the focus, and really just making sure that as little goes wrong as possible is just incredibly important. Now, the best players are able to roll with the punches, and if something in the map just goes a bit strange or a bit weird, they can brush it off, they can go straight in, they can adapt and deal with whatever they have to. It's the players that have less experience that you worry about a bit more. Now, against VENGEURR, when we saw KELTZ yesterday, I think one big thing that we had both seen against Buckster was a real impatience. That first map, it could potentially have been nerves, it could potentially have been because it was your first match, but I know the Slash was said to be his favorite champion. I feel like the Slash was a detriment because the speed was being used against you recklessly round corners with a defensive playstyle just ate that for breakfast. And VENGEURR's the kind of player that if he even catches a slight hint that that's going to work against you, he's going to develop a whole map around that.
Yep. Well, I hope everyone's excited here because day 2 officially kicking off. All right. That's what we like to hear. All
Shout
right.
outs to the crowd, of course. It is bright and early here at QuakeCon, but it's a pleasure to see so many of you already. Let's fill this up throughout the course of the day, shall we?
Absolutely, and here we go. This is the first match of day 2 of the Quake World Championships, and we're starting off on VENGEURR's point of view. Now, for this map catch-up, I really do think that VENGEURR's got the champion pick advantage. Overall, I think it's very balanced, especially on map 3. KELTZ has got a really strong pick of his own, but so far, Anarchy on Deep Embrace is an absolute menace.
And already looking for the rails. There's plenty more where that came from, especially on this map. VENGEURR off to a strong start, looking for a bit of opening damage. KELTZ already around the corner. At this point, VENGEURR kind of refusing to miss. And I think KELTZ going in for the Pika decided that it was the safest bet to just cancel it. You don't want to be a sitting duck in that situation. Another rail hits its mark. VENGEURR one on exit just for good measure. Doesn't manage to land, however. He's just keeping that strong control over the map. We're going to go for that rocket jump, a nice little speed boost at the same time, and already round the corner into hello. My name is VENGEURR, and it's 2-0 up Flea.
Absolutely. VENGEURR, before that last missed shot, was actually sitting at 100% rail accuracy. Fired 6 shots, landed every last one of them. No surprise that KELTZ is struggling right now. Now, he did manage to secure the mega health. That's going to help him quite a bit. But VENGEURR has got the positional advantage. He's the first to maneuver himself onto heavy. KELTZ does get away with railgun. That's important. Weapon denial, denying access to the railgun on this map is often a critical part of high-level play. And KELTZ has managed to get away with that weapon, but he is so low. One more shot will do it. VENGEURR smells blood in the water, doesn't want to let him get away.
Oh, that rail so nearly landed. I've got to say that rocket jump from VENGEURR was pretty damn tidy. I mean, more efficient than using the jump pad, being able to have a lot more control over where you land as well, especially with Anarchy. That's one of the huge benefits of Anarchy, that increased air control. Now, as we're making a chase here, we're looking at that next objective. KELTZ getting a decent amount of LG damage, but not going to be in position for the heavy. In fact, we're going to disengage and just trade out an item for an item. In this instance, though, definitely feels like the armor was the better win, because VENGEURR, had he not been pushed away by that Pika, I think he would have been able to make a push and maybe even take the third frag.
I like how much focus VENGEURR has been putting on playing his opponent rather than the items, right? Mega was up for so long, Ketchup, and instead of dropping down to get it, he was continuing to apply pressure onto KELTZ. And now heavy up, just 3 seconds, both of the major items pretty much tied. VENGEURR kind of in a bad spot right now. He's got to be careful. That rail, that's going to buy him a lot of precious breathing room. And now he can move around, catching KELTZ in midair, and heavy will be his prize.
Truthfully, I do not think KELTZ was ready for that play.
No, he was not.
That's the fact that he was just caught out in the open there in a really bad position. There's zero chance he expected VENGEURR to instantly re-engage with that rocket jump. But that's the kind of thing that VENGEURR can do. VENGEURR can slow the game down to a snail's pace, but the moment there's an opening, he'll take full advantage, and before you know it, that gear shift is up to 11. But let's have a look for this next play here. It's going to be the Mega, of which KELTZ will be able to take it. But VENGEURR's happy with that. I've got my inject ready to go. I'm in position for heavy. I've got all the weapons, and now we can start to fight once more. You can take all the Mega in the world, but if you haven't got any armor, someone like VENGEURR is going to shred.
And I think that just really speaks to VENGEURR's priority right here. When you're playing a light champion like Anarchy, having the armor is so much more important than the health, because you've got the inject to work with, plus you don't spawn with any armor to your name. And if we now look at the stats catch-up, KELTZ has yet to secure a single heavy. Every single armor has gone in favor of VENGEURR, and that, I think, is just a testament to his game plan here. He really wants to prioritize control over the heavy and then constantly hunting KELTZ down.
If you're confident in your damage output, that's the general idea. If VENGEURR is able to control the heavy and also sort of soak up those lights whenever he can, KELTZ has all the health in the world, but it's not going to do anything to survive a little bit of LG or a couple of rails. Now, speaking of which, this could be the opening that KELTZ is looking for. He's going to hit himself a second rail here, and that, for the first time in this map, is going to force a trade-off of the opposite variety. It's now going to be VENGEURR stuck with the health and KELTZ with the armor on hand. That should be the green light for KELTZ to be a bit more aggressive. He's going to take full advantage of it here. There is no inject either. KELTZ with a good weapon choice. We're going to go for the machine gun, keep it nice and consistent, and because of that, take a frag up there. VENGEURR forced to retreat once again, and hang on a minute, these rails are looking pretty good too, Flea.
They are.
Chase it down. All right, second frag, let's go.
Good rail from VENGEURR though. Oh, but he's in a bad spot. Drops down too eagerly so. And now KELTZ.
Oh no! Good spawn there from VENGEURR,
yeah.
and one opportunity there to punish and take away that heavy. That's a really important frag, though. Had he missed that shot, probably wouldn't have died, but he wouldn't have had the heavy, and KELTZ would have been able to bring himself back up and make something else happen. But 5-minute warning. This is nice and close, to be honest. VENGEURR was off to a wonderful start, but KELTZ, little spree of his own.
The angle on that rocket jump needed to be a little tighter for KELTZ to get away with a ballsy move like that. Now VENGEURR has got top control. One frag in the lead, definitely nothing he's comfortable with. 5 minutes left to go. He wants to extend his lead, no dot. I like how he's playing this, keeping top control. He's got most of the weapons he needs. Doesn't have a hand on LG yet, but if we look at the weapons that have been used so far, LG has barely come into play for VENGEURR at least.
We've only really seen it those couple of opportunities where he's going to come flying around the corner.
200 damage, that's all.
Outside of that, it's been Rail City. KELTZ with the drop down into the rail to keep himself nice and safe. And actually, that direct rocket certainly changes the plan a little bit if you're in KELTZ's position. He's now trying to pick a defensive place here. Gets the heavy, but he is not particularly healthy. VENGEURR. See what he does. And actually the rail, KELTZ's rail play has been really good. The second he started to turn that up a notch, it's kind of changed the entire dynamic. Now VENGEURR, let's not forget, yes, he's Anarchy and yes, he has the injects, but without it, you're a light champion. You know, you don't have the same access to stack as everyone else outside of your ability. And if KELTZ is able to constantly hit these rails like that in really annoying positions, he's absolutely still in this fight. And now we're even, split down the middle. A little bit of this map left to go, VENGEURR. Looking for a bit more of those rockets, but hasn't got the right weapon to deal with the peeker.
Nope.
Instead just chose to retreat, which, to be fair, good move.
Oh, he's in a bad spot right now. Out comes the LG, KELTZ. Neither player is going to fully commit to that fight, but as you were saying, Ketchup, the railgun has indeed been so critical. When we started off, VENGEURR was sitting at 100%, then 80, then 70, still doing exceptionally well with that weapon, while KELTZ was missing most of his shots, but now it's been completely turned upside down.
Oh!
And KELTZ actually manages to survive and take the lead for the first time this map. Oh, he didn't pick up the vial.
That defensive rocket was so good. VENGEURR was so close to having an angle to refrag there and deal with KELTZ. And again, much like last time, would have been able to take the heavy for himself, but he didn't. VENGEURR misses the rail, which means he takes a whole bunch of uncontested damage. And with 15 seconds left to go on this heavy, VENGEURR, you've got to make a choice. Do you go to that light? I mean, it's too obvious. Surely he's got an angle waiting for you.
VENGEURR unable to pick up the item that he wanted. Now heavy will be the next major point of contest. VENGEURR already in position, but he's got to be careful. Those gaps in the floorboards. Damage put out through that can stack up quickly. There we go, that's one good rail. Big rocket.
Oh, no!
He didn't even need the rail. He didn't even need it. That was going to be a ring out, but VENGEURR gets a little bit of a style point bonus right there.
That could have changed the entire map though, because now VENGEURR is going to look to secure himself a second one. KELTZ gets as much damage as realistically you can in that situation, so maybe he can refrag, but I just don't know if he can reach the heavy in time. It's so unfortunate that that rocket into the ring out hit the way it did, because KELTZ had so much stack to work with, all of the weapons, all of the chances to continue to push forward, and then a ring out like that just takes away everything you have. And clearly, VENGEURR has used that to run away with it. And at this point, looks like it could be a first map, unless KELTZ can do something now.
Still a minute, 30 seconds left to go. Time is not on KELTZ's side right now, and VENGEURR knows this too. He's gonna get another heavy. I like how VENGEURR wanted to deny that, right? Even if he picked up the heavy right there, all he got out of it was really 20 points of armor. So he wanted to go for the engagement first, trade a bit, whittle down KELTZ's stack first before falling back on the heavy. This is so bad for KELTZ right now. He just burned, what, 10 seconds doing nothing with the peeker? He cannot afford to get drawn into these long engagements like that, Ketchup.
Gave a little bit of time for the stack, I guess, to diminish on its own. I guess that's the only takeaway we can have from that. And it gave KELTZ opportunities there to safely be near the Mega right before it appeared. And to be fair, we're starting to hit rails. KELTZ is looking for even more, but these defensive angles from VENGEURR are going to make the rest of the rails really hard to land. But we are entering that final 35 seconds. KELTZ has to do something and has to do it now. Refuses to miss rails with the way things are currently going. And VENGEURR on the retreat, keeping those angles nice and tight round corners. tries to make the rail as hard to hit as it possibly can be, and we just need to waste time now. We need to make this frag, if we concede it, take as long as possible, that we can just delay the next spawn.
And also, if it happens, he needs to put out as much damage as possible, just to make sure that he can't be fragged again. Oh, KELTZ actually gets the kill.
He's gonna
8
delay.
seconds left, yeah. Here we go, rocket jump. Can he find VENGEURR? VENGEURR's
He's
back
the
over
opposite
heavy.
end of the map.
There we go. But that was a wonderful performance by KELTZ. What that was, Ketchup, that is a warning to any other player, right? This is VENGEURR. This man has secured himself a championship belt in the past. This is the #1 seed going into the World Championships, and KELTZ made it an excruciatingly close game. This is a warning, a heads up to anyone else that he might still face, and of course to VENGEURR himself going into map 2.
And at the same time, it was a kind of impressive sort of mini comeback being made in the map, where VENGEURR had a really good start, looked like he was completely suffocating KELTZ out of the map.
Yeah.
And I mean, we really have to give shout-outs to just that use of rail. You know, the fact that he was able to hit so many of those tight little shots in those unusual situations where at no point did VENGEURR feel safe, because at any moment, if you're within range, there's probably a rail coming out. And again, you're a light champion, you're Anarchy, that's not the kind of damage that you want to take, even if you have Inject. It's just the absolute turning point in that map had to have been the ring out near the Mega, because that was so even a match at that point. KELTZ had even stacked to VENGEURR, had the weapons, had the ammo. You know, we were going to take that item, we were going to probably have a bit of a fight there, maybe might not have resulted in something huge, but there. KELTZ might have been able to escape at that point. Maybe not, who knows, but the ring out took away any chance that had.
That sneaky peeker play was also great. VENGEURR was not expecting him to still be right around the corner, and he survived with 16 points of health. That was so close. One more shot by the peeker to connect. Things could have ended very, very differently. So VENGEURR managing to secure map 1. And if we look back at the statistics right now and we see the overview in terms of items picked up as well, KELTZ really stepped things up, I think, in the second half of the game. After those first 3 to 4 minutes, he really got into his own. And, you know, map 2, I think, could be just as close.
It has a chance to. KELTZ has been able to show that he's not really being intimidated at this point, you know, is staying true to what you know you can do, which is something that some players in their first major event like this can struggle, you know, because it's the difference in comfort zone. And it can sometimes be as simple as that. You know, you play at home, you play online, it's a set environment that you're very familiar with. You come somewhere like this and it's a totally different world, let alone the biggest Quake event in the world. But being able to just compete the way he did in that first map, but we're going into Corrupted Keep. This is where I'm not so sure, because when I look at Deep Embrace and a major part of KELTZ just staying in that fight, the unbelievable rail was quite the factor.
True.
What does this map lack, Flick?
The railgun, only map in the Quake Pro League pool, only map in the game that does not have a railgun. There is, of course, a heavy machine gun that kind of takes the place of the railgun for those long distance engagements. But yeah, as you rightly pointed out, Ketchup, rail was so important for KELTZ's comeback in the second half of the map, and this time around he's going to be lacking it.
On a map that VENGEURR is happy to throw down in. But it looks like this warm-up is coming to a close, so we're going to be engaging our second map, Corrupted Keep. VENGEURR 1-0 up, but that Deep Embrace was far from one-sided. We'll see if KELTZ can keep himself in this, or whether it's going to be a 2-0 to the Italian.
I've got to say, the only map that I really favored VENGEURR's champion pick on was map 1, and that was already so close. So when it comes to champions, this one I think is very balanced, but if it goes to map 3, I think KELTZ has got the advantage, at least in terms of picks and bans. So let's see how this plays out. So far, both players engaging in a nail gun fight, not something you see every day. KELTZ, I don't know about that push. The pushback on the LG, when you're trying to just jump through a choke point like that, that's not the best play.
The problem is, though, what is this going to result in? Because so much damage has been dealt. A really sort of clumsy affair from KELTZ there.
Absolutely.
Because what it's done is not only allow VENGEURR to take full map control, but one of the #1 ways to snowball this map is the delay on the items that you cycle. The delay happened in 30 seconds. So unless KELTZ can break this cycle, VENGEURR could have just won the map on that alone.
And this is Corrupted Keep, right? Very often it takes several minutes before there to really be a gap in between the items and for one player to get full control and set up his own rotation. But VENGEURR has now done that pretty much instantly. He's got to be careful. Rockets raining down from above.
Where's the damage?
KELTZ down to just a shred of HP and actually drops down to -1 on the scoreboard. Ketchup, I feel like clumsy is a really good way to describe it. That push, still, I'm still baffled by it. Why would he jump into the room when VENGEURR's waiting there with LG like that? And now, games are kind of being fumbled on KELTZ's end.
And that second fight, having the dual-wield rocket launcher, yet somehow we're seeing
barely
less damage than one standalone. And then after that, we see the accidental self-frag near the teleporter. VENGEURR wasn't even looking at him, and it was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just take that. And we're going to push in with even more of that LG to KELTZ, where even if you're BJ and you've got that regeneration, that ain't going to help you from the onslaught of LG from VENGEURR. And now 2 to -1, the 3 frag difference, and a alarming situation. This is the problem. You've been able to split those items, so no longer does KELTZ have something safe to fall back on. VENGEURR is going to be able to fight, get the frag, pick up the next item. Now our next objective is going to be to either deny some stuff in between, because we've got 15 seconds until the next item is going to appear.
That was so reckless, that last fight by KELTZ, jumping just around the corner with double shoddy. Yes, it's like one of the unorthodox plays that could work really well, but the execution also wasn't there. He was way too far away from VENGEURR to really do any meaningful damage with the super shotgun in that engagement. And to me, Ketchup, that just shows, yeah, a bit of carelessness, some recklessness. I don't know, but that definitely was not the play.
VENGEURR hasn't even needed to use his totems.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Rockets like that are a great way, but they're swiftly returned by 100 of VENGEURR's own. Let's not forget that, I mean, VENGEURR's rockets are some of the absolute best in the world. Many would say the best. So on a map like this, being able to compete with that is important, but you know your opponent's going to have even more on the other side. And here we go once more. Another frag. Here comes the health pickup. From this point, the only thing VENGEURR is lacking for pretty much the first time here is armor. If he gets opening damage to deal with KELTZ's armor, he's not going to have to worry. But at that point, KELTZ doesn't even challenge it. I almost feel like, you know, what do you do in this situation?
Yeah.
KELTZ is kind of just hiding in that room. I don't even know what that's doing for him, but maybe he's feeling out of options already.
Ketchup, I just switched to KELTZ's point of view, and he was just running around with the gauntlet in his hand for 5 to 10 seconds while he was sitting in that corner. That's the worst possible thing that you can see when switching to a player's point of view. He has nothing. He's got a shotgun, base machine gun, and tri-bolt. No rockets, no LG, no heavy machine gun. KELTZ is just completely outgunned right now.
And things are working so well for VENGEURR that defensive tri-bolt or a rocket, whatever that was, actually helped VENGEURR fly through the map and land into the other room, because he did himself a horizontal rocket jump right before taking the heavy. So I must admit, this is looking pretty rough so far. KELTZ is trying to establish himself near these major items, but I almost feel like you're just putting, like, you know, one finger in perhaps. But maybe if you don't do that, VENGEURR's just going to frag you anyway and pick up the items. So this is looking like one of the absolute roughest examples of how this map can go.
Yeah. Now we're also in a situation where VENGEURR finally has 2 of his totems up, right? So he's got health hidden around the map. He's got booby traps set up at the teleporter around the doorway into the mega room. And if he gets one more, which he already has at the ready, he's got himself a portable mega health. He's not even going to use it, because look at how much stack he's got. VENGEURR is just cruising right now. Everything is going in his favor. And what does KELTZ do? What is he capable of doing? So little, it seems like. He did manage to clean up those 2 totems, so that's going to work in his favor, but it won't be nearly enough to slow VENGEURR down.
What concerns me is that VENGEURR was able to establish a solid lead without using a single one, so it doesn't really seem like he needs it all that much. He's able to, again, set up nice and early in Mega and LG room. Pick it up without KELTZ really being there. Just get some massive rocket damage to boot. Now there's a chance for KELTZ to maybe take one of these items for the first time, but it's just not going to happen.
No.
VENGEURR is in and out and not even interested in the fight. You know, we're going to get some LG ammo first, because it means we can take this next fight near the health. KELTZ could be there, and if so, we're going to take him out, and that's just rude. The light armor's been taken as well. What does KELTZ have at this point to work with?
Doesn't even get the mega steal before he ends up dying. I just want to talk back about those abilities, Ketchup. VENGEURR has barely used his totem, and still I feel like he's gotten more utility out of it then KELTZ has gotten out of the dual wield, right? What has he managed to accomplish with the dual wield? Times where he's used it, it feels like he's gotten barely any damage out of it. Plus, it's not as if he's getting, you know, intimidation, pushing his opponent away from a fight. No. So far, it feels like, yeah, the dual wield has done close to nothing for him.
I mean, he pulls out 2 rocket launchers and he looks really cool until he dies.
Style points, yeah. But
until he dies.
And at this point, VENGEURR 6 points in the lead. 3.5 minutes left on the clock. KELTZ, he needs to make a miracle happen.
Normally in this kind of map, you know, the pace can be changed by either some really, really good range damage from the heavy machine gun or some kind of game-changing direct rocket. But throughout the course of the 6.5 minutes here, because it's VENGEURR who is repaying you with rockets of his own, whenever KELTZ hits a rocket to do enough damage that it might do something, almost just as fast VENGEURR has returned fire and hit you the same, if not more damage. So like those opportunities to say, right, I've hit 100 damage, I'm going in, I'm going to take advantage of this. VENGEURR hits the same back to you, you're back to a situation where you don't want to fight. Sadly, at this point, I mean, look, there is nothing left. KELTZ had to wait around for a good 3 or 4 seconds just for that light to appear. It's going to do nothing to save his skin, and now VENGEURR will have timing on that regardless, because he just saw it get picked up. That's another thing to starve you out of in this map.
I'm looking at the match stats catch-up, and there's a shocking statistics there. KELTZ has 6 damage with the LG. That is a single tickle of the weapon once. That's all that he's been able to do.
Not only that, but how many major items has he picked up? Because I just saw that.
Ooh, 1 heavy, 0 mega, whereas VENGEURR is coming up on 30. He's just picked up 30 major items, and KELTZ is on 1.
That is in such a heavy part to how this map began. The fact that that really strange fight happened, the 2 items were taken, that heavy might even have been the very first one at the start of the map, which might have given KELTZ that confidence to maybe try and be a bit more aggressive, even though it obviously did not work out at all.
Right.
But the rest of the map has been as you have seen. Not a single thing has changed. VENGEURR has cycled the entire map, soaked up every item. He's not satisfied with the major items. He's taken the light armors too. VENGEURR just driving around the corner and taking a direct rocket. But who cares how weak I am, because there's a heavy ready to go. 1.5 minutes left. 8 frags to come back, even to put yourself not at -1. This has been a difficult second map.
It absolutely has been, and Ketchup, this just feels like it's been one of the most dominant matches that I've gotten to cast in a while. If you look at the score, right, it's nothing that extreme, right? Sometimes you get games where it's like, you know, one player has like 15, 18 frags, the other is down at 2, 3, 4, but this somehow feels more dominant than a game where the scoreline is that skewed, because that's just VENGEURR's control, his damage output. KELTZ has been unable to do pretty much anything with the lightning gun. That right there, that's more damage than he's done the entire series with the LG. So VENGEURR putting up an absolute masterclass. I think this is just like, oh, okay, you think you're gonna play with the big boys after map 1? Let me show you what happens at that top level of Quake.
One hell of a way to start off the show. VENGEURR's going to be able to display that dominance that we're so used to, but at the same time, the adaptation. That first map was unbelievably close. We have to absolutely give KELTZ credit for the deep embrace, because there was a big chunk there where you're looking at it and thinking, whoa, to be fair, KELTZ could actually take this first map. Second map, nowhere near the same idea. And again, it really is down to those opening 30 seconds. That one fight in the LG room where it felt, how did you get 100 from that? How did you get 100 from that far away? But after that point, it was very little changed throughout the course of this. VENGEURR simply dominated the map. That's just rude. That's rude.
That's rude.
That's just rude right there. But what it is going to result in is VENGEURR taking the first series of the day, the GG, but the job is not done.
Nope, he needs 2 wins today to advance into the next day. Now, Wheat, you've rejoined us. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, kind of amazing game 1, right? Great job to KELTZ getting the one frag. Almost winning, right? But game 2 is where it gets really interesting, because first off, I'm guessing that VENGEURR wasn't incredibly impressed with himself after game 1. But when you look at game 2, and we just saw 19 heavies, 19 megas, 1 heavy, 1 mega. I was back in the room and I was saying, this is a game that is truly showcasing how you could win just based off control alone. You know, the situations where it did result in a frag were a result of just having the map on complete lockdown. And that just can't feel good, right? Being on the other end of that. But I think it was a little bit of VENGEURR saying, I'm not super happy with that game 1. Just like you said, I'm bringing it, all of it, in game 2. And that was just a masterclass of how well you can control corrupted keep. And I mean, I'm curious to see what KELTZ is going to be able to do, because getting within 1 frag of beating VENGEURR and at one point even having the lead, that's impressive, right? But that was an interesting matchup to start the day.
It can sometimes be a rude awakening.
Sure.
When you play a map like this against one of the absolute greatest players in the history of Quake champions, you know, you pointed it out. I think you saw it from KELTZ's point of view. There was a good 10, 15 seconds in the room near Tribolt where he's just walking around with a gauntlet. Almost suggests at that specific moment, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do here. He's got everything on the map. Every time I try and do something, he returns it with even more damage. And at that point, when you're in your own head like that, you've got no chance.
I mean, and the shocking part of that is sometimes, like, you see players do that in the final minute or two, right? When it's already over and done, the opponent's got a 10 frag lead. Yeah, why not just run around with your gauntlet, because it's already done. But this was, what, 2-3 minutes into the map? VENGEURR was only a few frags ahead of him. Just that feeling, that must have been so oppressive for KELTZ.
Yeah, and you want to make moves because you need to get out of that negative status too. But at the same time, whenever, you know, Dan said, it sucks whenever you move and you just die, right? There was no opportunity really for that to even happen, and just goes to show why VENGEURR is #1 seed and the kind of reigning champion. So great first game here in the round of 16. Guess what? The action's not stopping there. We have so much more coming at you for the remainder of the day. Our next match right here on stage is going to be Rafa versus Dan the King. So we're going to take a quick break. When we return, game 2 of the round of 16 here for the Quake World Championships. Don't go away. We'll be right back.